It's the TMZ Behind the Bar podcast with the TMZ lawyers, Jason Beckerman and Derek Kaufman.
Welcome to Behind the Bar. We are proud to partner once again with Blue Apron, the best value, most delicious, easy to prepare home recipe delivery service. I said that sort of awkward. I garbled that. The easiest to prepare, best value in the home delivery recipe services.
Yeah, step up your cooking game, people. This is Blue Apron's the way. So go to blueapron.com/TMZ. Get your first 3 meals free.
Free shipping as well. Our bread and butter on Behind the Bar is to analyze, sort of from a legal perspective, the hottest news in celebrity journalism. We typically take something that's happened during the previous week, and we
usually involving Justin Bieber or Kardashian
or
a president
or Donald Trump or whomever it might be. This week we're going to depart a little bit, not from the lack of the timeliness of it, but really Derek and I, we love this issue. We've been talking about it forever.
Don't slow play it. This is the podcast people have been waiting for,
and
Jason.
It really allows us to do what we really love to do, which is to delve deep, to sort of nerd out on a really thorny legal issue and, sort of explain our thoughts on it and see if you guys disagree or agree with us.
This one, I think, more than any other podcast, is a window into our actual life.
That's right.
Because Jason and I are often immersed in deep, meaningful discussions
Why do
about
I feel that
this topic.
Everyone listening just sort of automatically shut a window in their house.
Turn it up.
All right, so slack fill. Derek, what is slack fill?
What is slack fill? So slack fill is defined by the U.S. FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, as the difference between the actual capacity of a container and the volume of product actually contained in the container. We all know what slack fill is. I never knew the word until these lawsuits, a rash of lawsuits came out. But basically, it's the useless space. When you open a bag of chips, you get many fewer chips than you expect.
Now, we typically see this in movie theaters. We've all had this experience. We go to a movie theater, order a package of candy, we open it up, and it's got the inside the box, which you don't get this in a candy store or in a grocery store when you buy candy. But in a movie theater, you buy a box of candy, you open it up, and inside is a little package of the actual candy that takes up roughly half of the box itself.
If you're lucky.
And that is called slack fill.
That's slack fill. So it's the mismatch between the consumer's expectation for a big box of candy to get them through the entire Despicable Me 2 and the actual reality. So people were starting to get upset.
And leave it to lawyers to leave no stone unturned.
So we've seen a rash of these lawsuits, and they tickle me because they sound frivolous. I'll be honest. They sound like sort of petty lawsuits, but people are very upset, and sometimes they put together a class action. So a recent one this past month was someone went to a Los Angeles movie theater, and they bought a box of Mike and Ike, classic movie candy, right?
Yeah, great.
You don't really eat Mike and Ike unless you're going to the movies.
You can go the hot tamale, but you're left with kind of the sting in your mouth that lasts for a while. Mike and Ike brings the nice texture of the hot tamale without the sting.
And you feel like you're in an old-timey movie theater environment when you're eating Mike and Ike. Yeah. You don't really eat those.
We've probably gone on enough about this.
But enough about Mike and Ike. Anyway, this woman buys a box of Mike and Ike, and she says, there's way too much slack fill, and you know what? I'm going to do something about it. And I think other people are upset about this. She filed a class action lawsuit where she said the amount of slack fill is so preposterous that I've been defrauded. Basically, they have misled me into buying a box that has so many fewer candies that I think I should be compensated. Now, there's not a lot of money for individuals because your real harm is you bought the box for $5, here's your $5 back. But when you put a class action together, lawyers start to salivate.
If you have, for example, 10 million people who have bought Mike and Ike's or similar candies for $5 a piece, and they have been, they say, defrauded out of half of that value, $2.50 times 5 million, or 10 million, whatever the number I used was.
That's right.
You all of a sudden have a very valuable lawsuit.
Right.
For
let's say now it's
$50
million maybe. You get 10 million people
and that's
together.
the essence of a class action. This woman expressed, her name is Ms. Escobar. She expressed surprise, quote unquote, surprise and disappointment when she opened the box of Mike and Ike candy at the movies. So says her attorney Ryan Clarkson.
Yeah. So listen, these are slack fill lawsuits. Now there's a whole host of them. We've seen these for Raisinets.
So the Raisinets one is almost identical, similar movie theater, slack fill. What was interesting there is, I want you to talk about this. There are exceptions when you're allowed to fill up the candy box or the potato chip bag to less than capacity for various reasons for the preservation of the food itself.
So I did some digging into this because the FDA law is fascinating.
Yeah.
But there are reasons. There are reasons for slack fill. This is not to dupe you. The reason for slack fill, now maybe some companies think we can save a few bucks and sell less chips or something. But the reason for the chips being filled with air is to protect the product while it's being shipped. Because if not, if there's no air in there, you'll get a bag of crushed chips every single time. So what they do is they puff it up with air so that when it's shipped in these large containers, everything is padded a little bit. That's why you get styrofoam peanuts in handle with care boxes. That's also considered slack fill, by the way. The other thing you'll see is products tend to settle, right?
Yep.
If they're on a ship from China and they're shipping it all the way to the U.S., everything's going to settle at the bottom. This is very common in cereal. So they're also allowed to have some slack fill because they don't want the product to like sit at the bottom and all your marshmallows from your Lucky Charms are sitting at the bottom.
Right.
You can put some slack fill in there.
Right.
Or a transparent container where you can see the contents. You're not
Nobody's
as much
being
duped.
defrauded.
That's
Right.
right. So no,
Exactly.
if you see that the air is in there, you're not duped
Now,
in the same way.
I also read that there
Yep.
was an issue involving Sour Patch Kids, and they're maybe allowed to have some slack fill in Sour Patch Kids and other similar candies because they will stick together. And if
That's
you
right.
don't have room in the box, if they're all pressed together in the box, the candy will actually adhere to one another. You get a less sort of valuable product for the consumer.
Right.
And so, but interesting, in the Raisinets lawsuit, they specifically brought this out, and I haven't actually seen the Mike and Ike lawsuit. My guess is they made this argument
It's
as well.
similar, I'm sure.
In Raisinets, they actually coat the Raisinette, the manufacturer's Nestlé, actually coats the Raisinette with a coating that prevents it from sticking together. So they can't then argue, hey, we needed the slack fill to stop the candy from sticking together because you've taken care of that chemically.
That's
You've
exactly
taken
right.
there scientifically, you've taken care of that.
And I buy this. Look, Raisinets are my favorite candy, actually.
Yeah.
For when I go to the movie theater, I get Raisinets, and they have
That
a
is
high.
so lame.
Mary thinks it's the lamest candy. I adore
You chocolate
Raisinets.
covered raisin. You can have any candy you want. You go with a chocolate covered raisin.
It's fantastic. I was the nerd who was eating the raisins.
And let me guess, you
I had a box of
smuggle the
raisins.
box in. You don't actually spend $6
Oh
on a
yeah,
box.
I can't stomach buying movie theater candy, so I bring my own. But anyway, they're covered with a high gloss sheen.
Yeah.
They would never stick together. This is you could basically see your reflection in a raisin. It's really quite a
That's
delicious
true with the Mike
candy.
and Ike as well. It's
Also true with the Mike and Ike.
Yeah.
Buff to a high sheen. So listen, there are reasons. Does this resonate with you though? I have to ask you. So I see these lawsuits and I think these are lawyers getting rich. At the end of the day, the consumers in this class action are going to get a check for maybe $1, $1.50,
here's
and
what
the
I think.
lawyers are going to get rich. So what have we really solved?
Yeah,
If
well,
it's-
no, I mean, it is true that the lawyers are the only ones that really make out in this way, but the consumer can eventually too, because it will stop the practices of these companies if what they're doing is trying to defraud customers. And, obviously I can't speak for Nestle. I don't know the facts well enough to make a really intelligent judgment on these things, but I do think it would not be beyond any company to try and lower its cost in producing a product and increase its profit.
Yeah.
And one way to do that would be to provide less product and charge the same price as you would if you provided more product. There's no question that Nestle, for example, would make less money if they filled up the entire box of Raisinets.
So while there may be a legitimate reason to protect the product that they're selling, there also is a profit motive. And when there's these mixed motives involved where we can sell fewer chips and make a bigger profit off of them, and it also we can say it protects the chip in some way, then there's you
But
worry about that. And that's why lawyers get involved and say
I-
you're actually doing it for a profit.
I
incentive.
really do think in the candy context that these companies really do have something to answer for, because this whole idea that you can sell a box that looks large but you're providing something that's less, even though the ounces are printed on the outside of these boxes and those ounces are accurate, so they say 4 ounces, 6 ounces of candy. It's hard to contextualize that. You don't know what that means when you're looking at a box of candy. I have no idea how much a typical box of candy weighs.
Right.
I assume that I'm going to get the amount of candy in that box that is indicated by the size of the box.
And I think that's a fair assumption to make. There's whole websites also devoted to this. Isn't Slackville, but like the McDonald's hamburger you get doesn't look exactly like the McDonald's hamburger in the
Yes.
advertisements. But that to me is within the range of how food actually looks versus food art. This is more deceptive to me.
And there's a lot of legal scholarship on this idea of puffery, right? When you're marketing something, you're allowed to puff it up. You're allowed to make it look a little bit better than it actually is. You're allowed to say something is the greatest product in the world, even though you might think something else is a good product. That's just called puffery.
Right.
And the idea is that the average consumer, is fully aware of the fact that when companies advertise something, they're not entirely, completely 100% honest about it. They give a little puffery, much like everybody does in their resume. I interview people. Every time I look at somebody's resume, I think, all right, whatever I'm seeing here, it's 10% less impressive than it is. I get there's puffery when you're marketing yourself. Similarly, there's puffery in marketing
And when you're
products.
buying a car and they say that air blows so cool, you're going to get so many chicks in the back, you never really get the chicks.
What an odd thing to bring to
No, but
air
that's
blows so cool.
Oh, sometimes
you're
it's
going to
like-
get so many chicks in the back.
Yeah, stuff
Is
like
that
that.
is that your Emma? Is that your line?
This
Like,
thing's got a cool sound
hey-
system. Satera's going to sound great and crisp on these speakers.
No,
Things
you were talking air conditioning a second ago.
it blows so cool sometimes.
So you're gonna get a lot of
In
chicks
Florida,
the back.
that's a big deal. Really quickly before we leave this topic, Starkist tuna, because I wanted to talk about some of these are pending lawsuits. We don't know where they'll go. I don't know if the Mike and Ike lady's going to get paid. I don't know if the Raisinets person's going to get paid. In 2015, Starkist, the tuna company, was sued in a consumer class action about Slackville over their 5-ounce tuna cans. They settled for $12 million. So I think these types of cases in recent memory get lawyers thinking. They're like, well, there's $12 million the tuna company coughed up. Maybe we can get it from the candy company.
So it is interesting. Plaintiffs' lawyers will drive a lot of regulation, and you saw it most effectively in cars. Ralph Nader, you all know who he is. He is the one that sort of made suing the car companies, the old Ford Pinto, the seatbelt laws, that all came from Ralph Nader, and he was a pariah of the auto industry and still is a pariah of the auto industry. And you know, there was a lot of aspersions cast at Ralph Nader. You're just trying to make money on the back of consumers or on the back of car companies. And maybe that's true, but nevertheless, cars today are worlds safer than they were and they otherwise would be because of the Ralph Naders of the world. And so the idea would be, and there's no product safety issue that we're talking about here, but the idea is that these kinds of class actions, these kinds of lawsuits, although unseemly to a large degree, because again, it is the lawyers who get rich, the plaintiff in this case will get her $2.50. That's the maximum amount of her award, maybe a bit of $1,000 sort of.
Well, her emotional suffering, maybe.
Yeah, her emotional. So she's going to get her $250 back.
Right.
But the lawyers, if they successfully settle and they'll look to settle, will get millions of dollars. And it's really unfair. But the idea is that the future consumers will be protected.
It warms my heart that you've compared now Ralph Nader's quest with writing unsafe at any speed and changing the auto industry to give us seatbelts in the same breath as Mike and Ike, the lawsuit.
Well, I'm just worried about Raisinets, frankly.
But after the break, we're going to talk about our favorite case. It'll give you the real window into what we care
Derek
about.
and I have worked together for about 3.5 years. Never have we had a more heated debate than the subject we're about to bring up after the break.
Yep.
Brings us to blueapron.com.
You had another meal, didn't you?
I had another meal.
So Jason is on meal number 2 with his family. Tell us about it.
So I had beef tacos and the entire process, and I have some photos here. I know Parker's running through the on YouTube. We made Blue Apron tacos, lightly thin beef, all chopped up. Just fry it up easily. Add the taco seasoning, which is much better than what you get out of a package. It took maybe 25 minutes, and we had a meal for my entire family on the table, and it was sensational.
Now, what I find remarkable is they give you a picture of it on the recipe card, which I always try to emulate as much as possible. It really forces me to step up my game in terms of presentation. I think you get really into it. You're chopping things finely. You make a fresh salsa. You put it on top, and I think it's just as beautiful. You want to eat pretty food, and they really deliver on that.
And what I really like is it's all pre-measured, so the mess is much less than it is when I cook it home for myself. The cleanup is much easier than it is when I cook it home for myself. And I love to cook, and it basically short circuits the process. And what would otherwise take me an hour, you know how tacos are, where you have 57 different ingredients you want to put on. They all come to you pre-measured and right to you, and it's easy as pie.
And you're feeding your family. Jason has 2 girls, a wife, for less than $10 a person.
Go to blueapron.com/TMZ and
get your first 3 meals free, and shipping's on them.
So again, the story that Derek and I have debated most hotly in our time together involves Starbucks, and specifically the Starbucks' apparent unwillingness or inability to fill up their cups of tea and coffee.
I see our podcast all culminating to this moment. I've been looking for an excuse to talk about the Starbucks lawsuit, and we got this Mike and Ike Slackville lawsuit. We said this will give us an opportunity to really let them know about Starbucks.
Right. Go ahead and articulate your ridiculous opinion.
Here are the 2. So Starbucks faced 2 lawsuits a few months ago. One lawsuit said, I bought a hot latte.
Yep.
And I feel as though my lattes have been systematically underfilled by Starbucks because although I order a tall, which is, let's say, 12 ounces, what I'm getting is actually 8 or 9 ounces of liquid and then 3 ounces filling up with foam.
Right.
And foam in the food science literature does not count as fluid ounces. And you owe me 12 fluid ounces. In the ice context, they're saying I'm getting lattes, but you're actually putting so much ice in there that the fluid ounces I'm getting is about 60 to 70% of the actual latte I deserve.
Right.
I think this is a gross injustice.
Yes.
And I just have my feelings about this, and I think Jason disagrees.
Well, so you say that people should get the full amount of their latte and foam on top, or their iced coffee and ice added to the fluid ounces they're promised.
That's right. I think when they put on their menu, you're getting 12 fluid ounces, 16 fluid ounces, 20 fluid ounces. You deserve fluid ounces. Foam isn't fluid, and neither is ice.
All right, so let me ask you a question.
Yes.
If you got a latte and you ordered it with foam, and it came without foam, would that be a problem?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So
yes. Maybe they could put a separate foam cup.
Oh, so that's what you're saying. You need to fill up one cup. See, here's my thing. When I order a latte, I expect it to come with foam.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that if I order a tall, it's a 12-ounce cup. I've been to Starbucks before. I know that's what I get, right? If they served it without foam, I'd be upset. If they served it with foam and the foam was going over the top of the cup, because they gave me 12
Right.
ounces of coffee and the foam was steaming out of the top. Or if I order iced coffee and there's no ice, I'm going to be upset. As a matter of fact, I ordered iced coffee. It's right in the name. It's iced. It's iced. It's right there in the name. If no ice, I'm going to be upset because then I just have coffee. And I would have ordered coffee if I wanted coffee. But I wanted iced coffee, and you're saying give it to him without the ice or give him a side cup of ice. I don't want that. Then I have to gingerly pour the ice into the coffee.
What I don't want is ice coffee with no D. I want coffee that's been iced with a D at the end.
You don't want
it to
cold
have been-
coffee.
I want it cooled by ice. I don't necessarily want just ice in my cup. I want it cooled by ice. Now, here's the other question. I agree with you. A latte has foam. You know what they should do if they offer 12 fluid ounces? They should put it in a 14-ounce cup with 2 ounces of foam on top so that I get my 12 fluid ounces. Or tell me you're selling me a 10-ounce tall latte with 2 ounces
That's not on
of
the
foam.
menu. There's tall, there's grande, and there's venti, which I think is ridiculous. By the way, I've always resisted. I always order a large or extra large. That's no, a small, medium, or large. That's what I order.
What if they say we don't have those sizes here?
I
sir?
say, yes, you do. Then I point in the cup. I look at this cup. It's a 12-ounce cup. I'm not expecting a 14-ounce beverage. I'm expecting a 12-ounce beverage, and I want my damn foam.
Why don't you like the whimsical venti, 20 ounces, venti? It makes
I
you
don't
feel
like
like
it.
you're
I
in
don't
Rome.
like it.
Here's my other curveball for you. One of the allegations in the lawsuit, and this is serious, Jason, is that they said that Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, in a cost-saving measure to save milk, actually instructs the baristas to fill to a certain fill line when they're making a latte that is well below 12 fluid ounces. And they're saying, not only are you deceiving me, you're deliberately telling your baristas to underfill their lattes and fill the rest with foam to save money on milk, which has spiked in price. Jason,
Derek,
I win. I
you
rest my
ignorant
case.
slut. I'm telling you. This is ridiculous. He's not. But first of all, the idea that Howard Schultz went to his each individual barista and say, hey, underfill the coffee. No, they made a business decision about how much coffee, how much milk, how much foam to provide the best product they can to the customer. I mean, you're talking about not even pennies that they would be saving. You're talking about pennies over the entire existence of the company. This is preposterous. What they're trying to do is provide a delicious product. They charge $19 or $26 for a cup of coffee there anyways. They don't need to save the third of a fluid ounce.
If you want to live in the deceptive Starbucks bubble, I'm going to Pete's, okay? Because Pete's gives you the fluid ounces that you deserve as a customer. And I will say this. I looked into this. Starbucks had argued that no reasonable consumer would have been misled. Judge Thelton Henderson of the U.S. District Court in San Francisco, where this lawsuit was filed, said, this is not a case where the alleged deception is simply implausible as a matter of law. So on we call it a 12B6 or a motion to dismiss, before there's any discovery looking into things, whether this lawsuit can go forward, he said the deception is at least plausible, so I'm going to hear this out. You know as well as I do, that's a ton of leverage for the class action.
Is it true that Judge Henderson beats his wife? I'm just asking. I don't have any evidence that he does, but I'm just saying that seems like preposterous ruling.
I love this. One of the quotes from the ruling, and I agree with you. I mean, it seemed this is surprising.
You agree that he beats
no.
What do you
No.
agree with me with?
This is surprising to me, the ruling, because although I believe is a gross injustice, I actually thought it would be so disruptive to Starbucks business that the court would find a way to say, really, a reasonable consumer knows there's latte with foam. But what he said was, the court finds it probable that a significant portion of the latte-consuming public could believe that a grande contains 16 ounces of fluid, measured without milk foam or in its cooled state. So he says, let's hear him out. Let's see where this lawsuit goes, because it's actually going to move forward.
I'm done arguing with you. You're on such a limb. It broke a long time ago.
Take it up with Judge Thelton Henderson.
Oh, Judge Henderson.
So anyway, this has been something that has rankled Jason and I thank you for indulging us.
All right, guys. Mail time, Parker?
Mail time. Remember to write in your questions and comments to behindthebar@tmz.com. First one up is from Dennis Weber. So it looks like Harrison Ford has gotten into some aviation trouble again.
Oh, my God.
This
the guy is
time-
a menace out there.
India's having problems with his flight.
Indiana.
For the in the know Indy, right?
Oh, I thought you said India.
I thought you said India too. This time, not crashing, but landing on a taxiway instead of a runway. At what point does the FAA take away a pilot's license?
Is it time to take away Grandpa's license?
Yeah, this is a really
so
serious story.
I am not done with the question.
Oh, sorry.
Well, you're done for us.
You can lose your driver's license for too many mistakes. Why not your pilot's license as well?
Well, you can lose your pilot's license for too many mistakes. The question is whether Harrison has committed mistakes deserving of having his license privileges revoked. Now, we remember the story when he landed on the golf course, but that was an investigation was conducted, and they said it was due to mechanical error, and
He was actually
sort of
lauded
heroic,
for-
that he put it down on the. This one's different though, Jason. I think we're getting to the point where so many things are happening to Harrison Ford. using his pilot's license, that eventually it's on you, Harrison.
Yeah.
Like, why does it always happen to you?
Yeah.
And at some point, I
It's
think
a really
he's
serious story.
menace.
I mean, the guy landed on an active taxiway where other airplanes,
commercial
commercial airplanes, were looking to taxi back to their gates or from their gates. Tremendous amount of traffic. He was very lucky he did not get in the path of an oncoming airplane that was either looking to land or to take off.
Now remember, he's a private pilot. Commercial pilots can't fly at this age. Typically, they take away their license at 65. Harrison's, I think, 74 years old now, so he'd be past that age. But as a private pilot, there's no age limit.
There's no age limit, but at the same time, the FAA does have a lot of license to take people's pilots' licenses away, and I think it's time. I mean, frankly, it's a single offense and you lose it kind of thing. You land on an active taxiway, and by the way, you land and you get on the radio and you say, "What are all these other planes doing here?"
Yeah,
so you didn't realize where he was at that moment.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
no, not from a senility
confused.
point of view. He as a pilot, he was like, "Oh my God, where am I right now? Why are there these planes around?" That to me is like, there's no second chance.
Yeah, I think at some point you need to sort of revoke the privileges, or at least subject him to a battery of tests to prove he can still fly, because it's such a high risk activity.
Yep.
All right, next one up is from Jake. Recently, the Wall Street Journal released a video and article about PewDiePie that caused Disney and YouTube to drop him from their roster and projects. Since the article and video seem to heavily lean on out-of-context sound bites, is there any way that PewDiePie could sue for defamation?
Let me first give a little bit for
Background
those who
of
don't
PewDiePie,
know.
yeah.
PewDiePie is the single most famous and successful person that ever existed in the history of YouTube. I read an article that his estimated net worth is $90 million.
And what does PewDiePie do exactly?
And PewDiePie does these videos where he comments on video game play, right? So somebody will be playing a video game, or he'll be playing a video game, and he'll talk watchers through the gameplay. Now, no judgments, whatever.
If you want to feel old, think about the success of PewDiePie.
Yeah, PewDiePie's success is incredible. We can't take nothing away from him. But I guess he paid some. The big thing that broke is that he is accused of the Wall Street Journal of paying somebody to hold up paid him $5 to hold up a sign on camera which said "Death to all Jews."
Yeah, apparently there's a service out there where you can sort of test the boundaries of what someone is willing to write on a sign and hold up publicly.
Yeah.
And to push those boundaries as far as possible, he said something that is, anti-Semitic.
Now, the Wall Street Journal broke this story, and they decontextualized it a bit, at least according to his supporters, because his supporters, who are legion on the internet, have come out and really gone after the Wall Street Journal and saying, look, if you watch the clips in full, if you watch PewDiePie sort of what he does in full, you will know that he was clearly being satirical. He was clearly joking. All he was doing was, as you put it, testing the limits of this. This is not at all what his sort of opinion is. And much like a comedian might do, where they get up on stage and they say outrageous things, and if they're funny, we laugh at them, we give them a pass. We don't. I mean, the things Don Rickles said on stage, for example. Why is this any different than that?
Yeah, I think of him like a sort of modern Ali G or something, who used to go and talk to people dressed up as a rapper and say offensive things to like C. Everett Koop and things like that. That was big when I was in law school. And, I find it not that different. This is just how kids prank these days or play silly games out there on the internet. Yeah. I don't think he deserves any job with Disney. Now, if Disney had bought the YouTube show,
they own Maker Studio, which in turn owns the PewDiePie PewDiePie cast.
And if they don't like this look, they're perfectly at liberty to cut him and say we don't want that out on our site.
So he can't sue Disney. Disney
There's
can
no First Amendment
talent.
right to do that.
Right. And so, but the question that I have is, Disney dropped him and is going to be depriving him of millions of dollars in income. That seems pretty certain. Can PewDiePie then go after the Wall Street Journal if they decontextualized his comments from what his true feelings are and made him seem like an anti-Semite, which he insists he's not? Is that problematic for the Journal?
It may be, although it depends how the Journal story was written, because if the Journal story is hewing closely to the facts, and they say PewDiePie has a show. On this show, there was a sign that was held up by someone who does things for $5 that said "Death to all Jews," and they just sort of lay out those facts. That's truth, and that's a defense to contextualizing it. If they said he's an anti-Semite because of this, it's going to be an awkward position for PewDiePie to get around the fact that this actually happened.
I think I agree with you, although maybe it's unseemly, maybe it's not. The facts are yet to develop.
Yeah.
The idea that a news organization can be sued for laying out truthful facts, even if they were slightly decontextualized, which is the allegation, certainly not admitted by the Journal,
right,
That's just not the way our system works. You have a First Amendment right to publish what you're going to publish, just as long as it's not false. And in this case, it wasn't. I think it's very unlikely that the journal would actually suffer liability.
I agree. I don't think they willfully disregarded any facts. They just presented them in a way that was unflattering to PewDiePie, and that's unfortunate, but it's certainly not defamation in my book.
All right, so the last question up, I believe, was from Mark from last week about asking what the smallest mistake you guys have made that has had large
I
consequences.
was hoping Parker had forgotten about this question from last week, but we did promise to come up with something.
We did.
And now I can say with certainty that Derek makes an inordinate amount of small
Would you say they're
mistakes.
legion?
Legion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the worst one is?
Nothing super devastating. I'm sure Harvey has a greatest hits list.
Right.
Probably somewhere on his home, on his
Right.
fridge. He has a list of them. You know, little things when you're reading documents very quickly and we're trying to break news. So they do happen, but never so devastating because we're a pretty careful news operation.
Right.
And we immediately fix things where I've maybe misread something. I don't want to get into details.
What about when you sent that shower pic to the entire staff?
when everyone's, I mean, that was deliberate. That's not a mistake.
All right. One place you will never make a mistake, though.
BlueApron.com.
Cookingwithblueapron.com. That's right. Getting the food there. It comes, first 3 meals are free.
Yep. Head over to BlueApron.com/TMZ. Get your first 3 meals free, and the shipping's on them.
Perfect. Thanks, guys, very much. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching. If you want more nerdy deep dives into the legal side of celebrity news, hit our subscribe button right here.
And check out our previous episode over here.